When I tell them
Understood.
I'm feeling good and gonna go back. When the adrenaline was going, I felt okay. And then obviously the ovation coming out at halftime.
Oh boy.
Aaron Rodgers is one of the most talented quarterbacks in NFL history, famous for his skill, confidence, and strong opinions. But Rodgers didn't become a legend by playing nice. Throughout his career, he faced rivalries, grudges, and heated moments that showed exactly who he couldn't stand on the field. Some of these clashes came from tough games, others from personal disagreements, and a few turned into long-lasting grudges that fans still remember today. Rodgers was never afraid to speak his mind or show his emotions, and that made his rivalries even more intense. Today, we're looking at the 6 NFL players Aaron Rodgers hated the most, and the stories that made it personal. These rivalries weren't only about football. They showed the side of Aaron Rodgers that fans didn't always see on the stat sheet. For Rodgers, every grudge came with pride on the line. When a player disrespected him, talked trash, or played dirty, it wasn't just another Sunday game. It turned into a fight for respect, and Rodgers took that personally. These clashes also shaped the story of his career. Some of his most famous moments happened because he wanted to prove someone wrong or show that he couldn't be pushed around. For the fans, those rivalries made the games more exciting because you could feel the tension every time Rodgers lined up against those players. They weren't just matchups, they were battles that made his journey unforgettable. Anthony Barr. Anthony Barr is one of the few players who truly got under Aaron Rodgers' skin, and for good reason. In 2017, when the Packers faced the Vikings, Barr delivered a brutal hit that broke Rodgers' collarbone. It wasn't just another tackle. It was the kind of play that flipped the season upside down. Rodgers was forced to miss 9 weeks, and with him on the sidelines, Green Bay's Super Bowl hopes collapsed. For a quarterback known for his toughness, being taken out like that was devastating. Rodgers didn't hold back afterward. In interviews, he said he thought the hit was dirty and completely unnecessary. He made it clear that while football is physical, there's still a code between players, and Barr crossed the line. To Rodgers, it wasn't just about being tackled. It was about losing a season because of one reckless play. That kind of scar doesn't fade quickly, especially for a competitor who prided himself on being available every week. The Packers-Vikings rivalry was already one of the NFL's fiercest, but after that moment, it became personal. Every time Rodgers lined up against Minnesota after 2017, fans remembered that hit. It wasn't just another divisional game anymore. It carried the weight of payback and unfinished business. What makes this rivalry unforgettable is the emotion behind it. Rodgers wasn't just facing another defender. He was dealing with the player who ended one of his best chances at a championship. For Rodgers, Anthony Barr became a symbol of frustration, pain, and the reminder that even one play can change everything. Antwan Odom. Not every rivalry Aaron Rodgers remembers comes from a superstar defender. Sometimes it's the unexpected players who leave the deepest scars, and that's exactly what happened with Antwan Odom. In 2009, when Rodgers was still proving himself as Brett Favre's successor, the Bengals' defensive end gave him one of the roughest afternoons of his young career. Odom constantly broke through Green Bay's protection, pressuring Rodgers, knocking him down, and throwing him off rhythm. For Rodgers, it was one of those games that burned into his memory. He was sacked multiple times, hit over and over, and never able to find a steady flow. Every time he dropped back, it felt like Odom was waiting for him. That kind of punishment doesn't just hurt in the moment, it leaves a mark on a quarterback's pride. Fans watching could see Rodgers' frustration boil as he tried to will his team forward while taking hit after hit. What made it sting even more is that Odom wasn't a household name. He wasn't a Hall of Famer or even a Pro Bowl regular. Yet, on that day, he looked unstoppable. For Rodgers, that was the most humiliating part, being humbled by someone who wasn't even considered one of the league's best. Those kinds of games never fade from a competitor's mind. In the grand scope of Rodgers' career, Antwan Odom didn't become a long-term rival. But in that moment, he embodied what every quarterback fears, being completely dominated by a defender you never expected. For Rodgers, Odom wasn't just another opponent. He was the reminder that in the NFL, even one bad game can stick with you forever. Colin Kaepernick. If there's one player who seemed to have Aaron Rodgers' number in the playoffs, it was Colin Kaepernick. The 49ers quarterback became a thorn in Rodgers' side during the early 2010s, and the frustration came from the biggest stage possible, the postseason. In the 2013 playoffs, Rodgers and the Packers traveled to San Francisco. Everyone expected a tight game, but what happened stunned Green Bay fans. Kaepernick put on one of the greatest rushing performances by a quarterback in NFL history, running for 181 yards and scoring twice on the ground. Rodgers watched as his defense simply had no answer, and Green Bay was sent packing in embarrassing fashion. If that wasn't enough, the next year brought more pain. In 2014, the Packers and 49ers faced off again, this time in the wild card round. Rodgers had worked hard all season to get his team in position, but once again, Kaepernick was the difference. He didn't put up the same rushing numbers, but he controlled the clock, made big throws when it mattered, and ended Rodgers' playoff run for the second straight year. Losing to the same guy in back-to-back years isn't just frustrating. It eats at a competitor like Rodgers. What made it worse was the way Kaepernick played. He wasn't flashy with words or trash talk. He just let his game do the talking, and his game was devastating. For Rodgers, who prided himself on being one of the most dangerous players in football, seeing another quarterback outshine him in the spotlight hurt deeply. Fans started talking about whether Kaepernick had Rodgers' number, and that kind of talk sticks with a competitor. For Rodgers, Colin Kaepernick represented more than just 2 playoff losses. He was the reminder that no matter how great you are, there's always someone out there who can spoil your dreams. And those memories made Kaepernick a rival Rodgers could never quite forget. Oh, by the way, if you're enjoying this breakdown, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It really helps us bring you more stories like this. And drop a comment below. Which player do you think gave Rodgers the most trouble? I'd love to hear your take. Russell Wilson. Few losses in Aaron Rodgers' career hurt more than the one against Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks in the 2015 NFC Championship game. For most of the afternoon, it looked like Rodgers and the Packers were headed to the Super Bowl. Despite playing on an injured calf, Rodgers had his team up 19-7 with just over 5 minutes left. Green Bay fans could already taste victory. But then everything started to slip away, and at the center of it was Russell Wilson. Wilson had struggled for much of the game, and Green Bay's defense had kept him contained. But when the moment came, he flipped the script. The Seahawks scored late touchdowns, converted a wild 2-point play, and forced the game into overtime. On the very first drive of OT, Wilson delivered a perfect strike to Jermaine Kearse for the game winner. Just like that, the Packers' season was over, and Rodgers was left stunned on the sideline. For Rodgers, that loss was devastating. He had battled through injury and done enough to put his team in position, only to watch it collapse in the final minutes. And what made it sting was how quickly Wilson went from being shut down to stealing the game with a single throw in overtime. It was the kind of comeback that defined Wilson's career and left Rodgers with one of the most painful defeats of his. The rivalry between Rodgers and Wilson wasn't built on trash talk or personal dislike. It was built on that unforgettable game where one quarterback's resilience took away another's chance at glory. For Rodgers, Russell Wilson will always be remembered as the man who turned one of his greatest opportunities into one of his toughest heartbreaks. Jared Allen. If there was one defender who always seemed to cause problems for Aaron Rodgers, it was Jared Allen. The star pass rusher built his reputation on bringing down quarterbacks, and with 136 career sacks, he was one of the most feared players of his era. Whenever the Packers and Vikings clashed, Rodgers knew Allen would be coming after him, hard. Allen's relentless energy and signature sack celebration became a regular sight in those divisional battles. He didn't need to be subtle about it either. Allen thrived on putting pressure on Rodgers, knocking him down and forcing him to throw before he wanted to. Even if the stats don't show exactly how many times Allen got to Rodgers, fans remember the chaos he created every time these two lined up against each other. What made Allen so tough wasn't only his talent, but his attitude. He was fiery, confident, and loved getting in the head of opposing quarterbacks. Rodgers, who prided himself on staying calm under pressure, often had to grit through Allen's constant presence. It wasn't just about sacks, it was about knowing that every snap came with the threat of Allen crashing through the line. For Rodgers, playing against Jared Allen meant more than just another Sunday. It meant facing one of the league's most dangerous pass rushers, a player who could take over a game with effort and intensity alone. In the long history of Packers-Vikings rivalry, Allen made sure Rodgers never had an easy day. Ndamukong Suh. If there's one defender who built his reputation on being ruthless, it's Ndamukong Suh. And whenever he lined up against Aaron Rodgers, things got ugly. Suh was known as one of the dirtiest players in the NFL, and Rodgers saw that side of him more than once. One of the most infamous moments came in 2011 when Sue stomped on a Packers offensive lineman right in front of Rodgers, leading to a suspension. But the bad blood didn't stop there. Over the years, Sue's physical play against Green Bay, late hits, hard tackles, and constant trash talk made him one of Rodgers' least favorite opponents. Rodgers prided himself on staying calm under pressure, but with Sue, it was different. Every snap came with the risk of a cheap shot, and you could see the frustration on Rodgers' face whenever Sue broke through the line. What made Sue such a hated rival was that he represented more than just tough defense. He represented danger, the kind of player who could end a quarterback's season with one reckless move. Rodgers respected talent, but he didn't respect dirty play, and Sue's history made their matchups feel personal. Packers fans dreaded seeing Detroit or Tampa Bay on the schedule because they knew it meant another Rodgers-Sue showdown filled with tension. For Rodgers, Sue wasn't just another defensive lineman. He was the face of the kind of play Rodgers despised: over the line, unnecessary, and fueled by intimidation. And that's why Ndamukong Suh earns his spot on the list of players Rodgers hated the most. Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Not every frustration in Aaron Rodgers' career came from the other sideline. Sometimes it came from a teammate he wanted to trust. That's where Marquez Valdes-Scantling fits in. From 2018 to 2021, he brought rare speed and a true deep threat profile to Green Bay. He could stretch the field and scare defenses with one route. But with deep shots come low percentage throws, and his catch rate with the Packers hovered right around 50%, roughly 123 receptions on 247 targets, which made consistency hard to find. That mix, big speed, lower catch rate, created a push and pull with Rodgers. When it worked, it was beautiful. Long touchdowns, momentum swings, the crowd roaring. When it didn't, it felt like a chance wasted. Drives stalled. Third downs slipped away. For a quarterback who values timing and trust, that kind of swing can be exhausting over a long season. It wasn't about effort. It was about reliability. Rodgers needed the throw to be there and the catch to be finished, especially in tight games. To be fair, MVS's role was designed to be high risk, high reward. His yards per catch in Green Bay sat in the high teens, exactly what you expect from a pure vertical threat, the kind of receiver teams use to open the field and force safeties back. That role helped the offense breathe, even when the box score didn't pop. But it also meant the misses were loud. Fans felt it. Rodgers felt it. So this wasn't a classic enemy story. It was a tension story, a talented deep weapon whose strength sometimes clashed with what Rodgers valued most: precision, rhythm, and trust on the money downs. That's why Marquez Valdes-Scantling ends up on this list. Not as a villain, but as a reminder that even inside the same huddle, chemistry can be the toughest matchup of all. Aaron Rodgers' career has been filled with highlights, records, and unforgettable moments. But just as much as the touchdowns and trophies, it's the rivalries that tell the real story. From Anthony Barr's hit that nearly ended a season, to Antoine Odom's nightmare game, to Colin Kaepernick's playoff heartbreaks, each of these players left a mark on Rodgers' journey. Add in Russell Wilson's shocking comeback, Jared Allen's constant punishment, and the frustration of Marquez Valdes-Scantling's inconsistency, and you get a full picture of the battles that shaped his legacy. What makes these rivalries special is that they were never just about football. For Rodgers, they were about pride, respect, and proving himself when it mattered most. Every grudge, every tough loss, and every moment of frustration added fuel to the fire. And for fans, those clashes gave us drama that went far beyond the scoreboard. You could feel the tension every time Rodgers stepped on the field against these players, knowing history and emotion were on the line. That's why Rodgers' story isn't only about his stats or even his championships. It's about how he responded when someone challenged him, hurt him, or let him down. Those moments showed us the competitor inside him, fiery, demanding, and unwilling to forget. But what do you think? Did I miss a player that Rodgers just couldn't stand? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about the biggest names and rivalries in sports. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.